You didn't lose her. You lost your position. This distinction isn't semantic, isn't wordplay, isn't philosophical. This distinction is mechanical, is systematic, is structural. Relationship isn't person, is system, isn't individual, is position, isn't about her specifically, is about role you occupied in her system. And position and system can be lost without losing person. Role and structure can be eliminated without person disappearing. Place in hierarchy can be removed without individual changing. You think you lost her. You lost position you held. You think relationship ended because she changed. Relationship ended because position became obsolete. You think connection broke because feelings died. Connection broke because structural role was eliminated. Understanding difference between losing person and losing position explains everything about what happened, about why it felt sudden, about why you couldn't fix it, about why she seemed fine. Most men confuse losing position with losing person, confuse structural elimination with personal rejection, confuse system change with individual change. Confusion creates wrong interpretation. Wrong interpretation generates wrong response. Wrong response accelerates position loss. What is position? What does it mean to hold position in someone's system? What is structure of relational positions? Position is role you serve in her life, is function you perform in her system, is place you occupy in her structure. Position includes what you provide, what needs you meet, what gaps you fill, what purposes you serve. Every person in someone's life occupies position, serves function, fills role, meets needs. Boyfriend is position, partner is role, relationship is functional place in life system. Position has requirements, has maintenance needs, has performance standards. Position continues as long as requirements are met, as long as function is performed, as long as needs are satisfied. When requirements stop being met, when function stops being performed, when needs stop being satisfied, position becomes obsolete, becomes eliminable, becomes replaceable. This is what happened. You didn't lose her as person. You lost position in her system. She didn't leave you as individual. She eliminated role you were performing. She didn't reject you as human. She removed position that became obsolete. And there's specific timeline to position loss. Specific stages through which position becomes obsolete. Specific process by which role gets eliminated. First stage is performance decline, where you stop meeting requirements at level you used to, where function performance decreases, where needs satisfaction drops. Performance decline happens gradually, happens through accumulation of small failures, happens through consistent under-delivery on position requirements. You used to provide attention, you provide less attention. You used to offer support, you offer less support. You used to create excitement, you create less excitement. You used to meet emotional needs, you meet fewer emotional needs. Each small decline seems insignificant, seems forgivable, seems temporary, but declines accumulate. Small failures compound, temporary becomes permanent, and accumulation reaches threshold, where performance has declined enough that position value is questioned, where under-delivery has accumulated enough that role utility is doubted. Second stage is position evaluation, where she assesses whether position is still valuable, whether role is still necessary, whether function is still needed. Evaluation isn't conscious necessarily, isn't deliberate analysis, isn't formal assessment. Evaluation is feeling-based, is intuitive, is automatic. She feels whether position adds value, whether role serves purpose, whether function meets needs. Feeling tells her position status. Intuition reveals role utility. Automatic assessment determines function value. During evaluation, she's asking questions. Not verbally, not consciously, but systematically. Is this position serving me? Is this role necessary? Is this function valuable? Could I function without this position? Would I be better without this role? Does this position cost more than it provides? And if answers are no longer serving, no longer necessary, no longer valuable, costs exceed benefits, position enters danger zone, role becomes eliminable, function becomes removable. Third stage is replacement consideration, where she begins imagining life without your position, where she mentally tests system without your role, where she explores functioning without your function. Replacement consideration is anticipatory, is future-oriented, is hypothetical testing. What would life be like without this position? How would system function without this role? What would change if this function disappeared? And if hypothetical life without position seems equal or better? If system without role seems functional or improved? If life without function seems manageable or preferable? Position is marked for elimination. Role is scheduled for removal. Function is designated for replacement. But there's something most men don't understand about positions. Something that makes position loss feel like personal rejection, when it isn't personal at all. Position isn't about you as person, is about function you serve, isn't about your qualities, is about your utility, isn't about who you are, is about what you do, and what you do can become obsolete without who you are changing. Function you serve can become unnecessary without your personhood diminishing. Utility you provide can become redundant without your value as human decreasing. Your same person you always were, but position you held became obsolete. Your same individual you've been, but function you performed became unnecessary. Your same human with same qualities, but role you occupied became redundant. Position loss isn't referendum on your worth, isn't judgment of your value, isn't assessment of your quality as person. Position loss is systematic, is structural, is mechanical. Position became obsolete because needs changed, because system evolved, because requirements shifted, because life structure reorganized. She needed certain things at certain time. You provided those things, you occupied position that met those needs. But needs change requirements, shift system, reorganizes, and when needs change position, can become obsolete when requirements shift role can. Become unnecessary when system reorganizes function can become redundant. Some men experience this when she gets promoted, when her career advances, when her professional position changes position. You held that provided career support becomes less necessary. Role you served that offered professional guidance becomes less valuable. Function you performed that gave career encouragement becomes less needed. Not because you changed, because her needs changed. Not because you declined, because her requirements shifted. Not because you failed, because her system reorganized. Other men experience this when she develops new friend group, when social circle expands, when community integration deepens. Position you held that provided social connection becomes less necessary. Role you served that offered companionship becomes less valuable. Function you performed that gave social fulfillment becomes less needed. Again, not because you changed, because her system filled that position through other means. Not because you declined, because that need got satisfied elsewhere. Not because you failed, because function became redundant through system expansion. Still other men experience this when she achieves financial independence, when income increases, when stability establishes position. You held that provided financial security becomes less necessary. Role you served that offered economic stability becomes less valuable. Function you performed that gave material support becomes less needed. Pattern is consistent. Position loss through system change, not performance failure. Role elimination through need evolution, not individual inadequacy. Function redundancy through life reorganization, not personal decline. And here's what makes position loss so confusing, so difficult to understand, so impossible to predict for most men. You can be performing position perfectly, meeting all requirements, fulfilling all functions, satisfying all needs, and position can still become obsolete. Perfect performance doesn't prevent position loss if needs themselves change. Excellent function execution doesn't protect role if system reorganizes. Flawless requirement satisfaction doesn't secure position if structure evolves. This is why you feel blindsided, why you didn't see it coming, why you thought everything was fine. From your perspective, everything was fine. You were performing well, meeting requirements, fulfilling function. But from system perspective, position was becoming obsolete. Role was becoming unnecessary. Function was becoming redundant. You were measuring performance. System was measuring necessity. You were tracking execution quality. Structure was assessing position relevance. You were monitoring function delivery. She was evaluating role utility. Different metrics, different assessments, different measurements. Your metrics said everything fine. Her metrics said position obsolete. Your assessment said performing well. Her assessment said role unnecessary. Gap between your metrics and her metrics is why you didn't see it coming. Difference between your assessment and her assessment is why you thought things were fine. Divergence between your measurement and her measurement is why loss felt sudden. For you, loss was sudden, position eliminated without warning. For her, loss was gradual, position became obsolete through process. For you, ending was surprising, role removed unexpectedly. For her, ending was inevitable, role elimination was systematic conclusion. And there's specific moment when position loss becomes irreversible, when role elimination becomes certain, when function removal becomes inevitable, replacement moment. When she identifies replacement for your position, when she finds alternative for your role, when she locates substitute for your function. Replacement can be person, can be new relationship, new romantic interest, new partner candidate, or replacement can be structural, can be career advancement, friend group expansion, financial independence, life reorganization. But once replacement is identified, once alternative is located, once substitute is found, position is eliminated, role is removed, function is replaced. This is point of no return, is irreversible threshold, is definitive moment. Before replacement position can potentially be saved, role can potentially be restored, function can potentially be recovered. But after replacement position is gone, role is eliminated, function is obsolete. And here's what's strange about replacement. Here's what doesn't make sense to most men until they understand systems. She can replace your position without finding new person, can eliminate your role without new relationship, can remove your function without new romantic interest. Because replacement isn't always person, is often structural, isn't always individual, is often systemic, isn't always romantic, is often functional. Career becomes replacement for validation you provided. Friends become replacement for companionship you offered. Financial independence becomes replacement for security you gave. Therapy becomes replacement for emotional support you supplied. Position you held gets distributed across system. Role you served gets divided among functions. Needs you met get satisfied through multiple sources, and distributed position is eliminated position. Divided role is removed role. Multiple source need satisfaction is replaced function. You as individual haven't been replaced necessarily, but you as position have been eliminated certainly. You as person haven't been substituted necessarily, but you as role have been removed certainly. You as human haven't been exchanged necessarily, but you as function have been replaced certainly. This is why she can leave and seem fine, why she can end relationship and appear unaffected, why she can remove you and show no distress. Not because she's cold, because position was replaced before removal, not because she didn't care, because function was distributed before elimination, not because relationship didn't matter, because role was substituted before ending. By time she leaves physically, position was already gone. By time she ends relationship, officially role was already eliminated. By time she removes you, actually function was already replaced. And there's something you need to understand about position recovery, about role restoration, about function reclamation. Once position is eliminated, recovery is nearly impossible. Once role is removed, restoration is extremely difficult. Once function is replaced, reclamation is effectively impossible. Why this is? Why position loss is so permanent? Why role elimination is so final? Why function replacement is so irreversible? Because system reorganizes around position absence. Structure adapts to role elimination. Life adjusts to function replacement. Once she's reorganized life without your position, once she's adapted system to your role elimination, once she's adjusted structure to your function replacement, reinserting position disrupts adapted system. Restoring role disturbs adjusted structure. Reclaiming function destabilizes reorganized life. System resists disruption. Structure opposes disturbance. Life rejects destabilization. This is why trying to get back in feels like pushing against wall. Why attempting to restore position meets resistance. Why working to reclaim role generates opposition. Not because she's being difficult, because system has adapted. Not because she's being stubborn, because structure has reorganized. Not because she's being cruel, because life has adjusted to absence. Adapted systems resist change. Reorganized structures oppose disruption. Adjusted lives reject destabilization. And here's the question men ask when they understand position loss, when they recognize role elimination, when they see function replacement. How do you prevent position from becoming obsolete? How do you protect role from elimination? How do you secure function from replacement? An answer reveals something about how positions work, about how systems function, about how structures operate. Position that doesn't evolve becomes obsolete. Role that doesn't adapt becomes unnecessary. Function that doesn't adjust becomes redundant. As her needs change, position must change. As her requirements shift, role must shift. As her system evolves, function must evolve. Static position becomes obsolete position. Unchanging role becomes eliminated role. Fixed function becomes replaced function. This is why relationships that worked perfectly for years suddenly end. Why positions that were valuable become unnecessary. Why roles that were essential become redundant. Not because performance declined necessarily, because position didn't evolve while needs evolved. Not because function failed necessarily, because role didn't adapt while requirements shifted. Not because you changed necessarily, because you didn't change while system changed. Maintenance requires evolution. Preservation demands adaptation. Security needs adjustment. Position must evolve with her needs. Role must adapt to her changes. Function must adjust to her system evolution. And evolution isn't guaranteed. Adaptation isn't automatic. Adjustment isn't easy. Most positions become static. Most roles become fixed. Most functions become unchanging. And static becomes obsolete. Fixed becomes unnecessary. Unchanging becomes redundant. So when you look back at relationship, when you review what happened, when you analyze ending, you'll see it differently now. You'll recognize position loss, not person loss. You'll identify role elimination, not rejection. You'll understand function replacement, not abandonment. For some of you, watching this position became obsolete through your performance decline, through accumulated small failures, through consistent under-delivery. For others, position became obsolete through her system change, through need evolution, through life reorganization, through structural adaptation. For some, position was replaced by person, by new relationship, by romantic substitute. For others, position was replaced structurally, by career advancement, by friend expansion, by independence achievement, by distributed function across system. But in all cases, in every situation, in each ending, you didn't lose her, you lost position. And position loss is systematic, is structural, is mechanical, isn't personal rejection, isn't individual inadequacy, isn't human failure. Position became obsolete, role became unnecessary, function became redundant, and obsolete positions get eliminated. Unnecessary roles get removed, redundant functions get replaced. This is what happened. This is how systems work. This is mechanism of position loss. You didn't lose her as person. You lost position in her system. She didn't leave you as individual. She eliminated role that became obsolete. She didn't reject you as human. She removed function that became redundant. Understanding this doesn't change what happened, doesn't restore position, doesn't reverse elimination. But understanding prevents personalization, prevents self-blame that isn't warranted, prevents interpretation of systematic process as personal rejection. You lost position, and position loss is systematic outcome, is structural inevitability when positions become obsolete, is mechanical process, not personal judgment. She eliminated obsolete position, removed unnecessary role, replaced redundant function, and system continues, structure adapts, life reorganizes. Without your position, without your role, without your function.